Democrats think you're stupid. They think you can't tell the difference between running a government and refusing to let it run. Republicans voted to reopen the government. Democrats voted no. Then they blamed Republicans for the shutdown. That's not leadership. That's sabotage with press coverage. Welcome to Right Power, the channel that's on the right side of common sense. In a world of left-wing outrage, every network, every blue-check pundit, and every Hollywood echo chamber repeats the same tired line. Republicans control the government. Oh, really? That's not totally accurate. See, they can't move it because Democrats are standing in front of every lever, arms crossed, yelling, "Republicans broke it." No, sweetheart, it's not broken. It's hijacked. And then there's late night's moral philosopher, Jimmy Kimmel, who decided to use Columbus Day to declare that Republicans control the Senate and the White House.
Also happens to be Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a federal holiday, although with the government shutdown, every day now is a federal holiday. We're on day 13 with no end in sight. A majority of Americans blame Republicans for the shutdown. Republican leaders are still trying to blame Democrats for the shutdown, even though they control the House, the Senate, and the White House.
So either Jimmy's lying, or he's just as clueless as the politicians he protects. And if we're being honest, it's both. Let's educate the leftists in the room, shall we? To pass a continuing resolution in the U.S. Congress, a simple majority is needed in the House of Representatives, while 60 votes are required in the Senate. The higher threshold in the Senate is necessary to overcome a potential filibuster. In the Senate, a CR requires 60, yes, 60 votes to overcome a filibuster and proceed to a final vote. The actual number of votes required to pass the measure is a simple majority. But the 60-vote threshold for ending debate makes bipartisan support almost always necessary. The filibuster is a procedural tactic used by the minority party to delay or block a vote. Why the difference matters? The requirement for 60 votes in the Senate is the primary reason that passing a continuing resolution is often challenging. This procedural reality means that even if a continuing resolution has majority support, it can still fail to advance without a certain amount of bipartisan cooperation. The result is often intense negotiation, and if no agreement is reached, it can lead to a government shutdown. Kimmel's entire monologue was a case study in selective stupidity. A comedian who suddenly becomes a political scientist when it's time to protect Democrats. Republicans control government. No, Jimmy, Democrats control obstruction.
They're demanding $1.5 trillion in new spending paid for by American taxpayers. And I want you to be specific. I want us to be specific. I want you to note what that counterproposal includes. But here's some of the highlights of this. It would reverse common sense reforms that Republicans made in the Working Families Tax Cut that keep illegal aliens off taxpayer-funded health care. They would also remove a very reasonable and modest work requirement that we put on able-bodied young men with no dependents. As we've said, they should not be riding the wagon and taking Medicaid that is intended for vulnerable populations, the elderly, disabled, and young pregnant women, for example, and not young able-bodied men without dependents who are playing video games. They would make in their counterproposal permanent COVID-era Obamacare subsidies without any income caps or any other reforms at all. They would make that permanent. That would cost taxpayers an estimated $358 billion. They would take away the $50 billion that we put into the law to support rural hospitals. They would remove that. And they would send $500 million to liberal news outlets by refunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It would also restore up to $5 billion of American taxpayer funds for wasteful spending for international projects. Here's a couple of examples. This is in their legislation, their counterproposal on the CR to keep the lights open. This is what they want to do. They want to spend $24.6 million of your hard-earned dollars as a taxpayer for climate resilience in Honduras. They want to spend $13.4 million for civic engagement in Zimbabwe. They want to send $3.9 million for LGBTQI plus democracy grants in the Western Balkans. They want to spend $2.9 million of your dollars for desert locust risk reduction in the Horn of Africa. And $2 million for, quote, organizing for feminist democratic principles in Africa. We are not doing that. These are unserious proposals from unserious people, and they are playing games while real Americans are being harmed adversely by the shutdown.
Democrats aren't serious about reopening government. I wonder why that is. Oh yeah, there's a No Kings rally planned. Gotta have something to talk about. Gotta have something to launch a campaign with for the midterms. Hard to scream No Kings when the kingdom's open and running just fine, huh? I predict the shutdown magically ends within days after the rally. Wouldn't it be nice to have a common sense Democrat to talk to? Oh, wait.
That's why shutting the government is really what the Democratic Party wants to do. And I follow country, then party. And it's the wrong thing for the country in a period of chaos. I refuse to vote to shut our government down. I absolutely would love to have... I would love to have a conversation about extending the tax credits for health care. Absolutely. But I would remind everybody, too, this was designed by the Democratic Party to expire at the end of the year. This is not something taken by the Republicans. They were designed to expire. Now let's have a conversation to extend it and not shut our government down.
But hey, let's rewind for a second. Let's start where the lie began.
They do not have to punish people that shouldn't find themselves in this position. And the reason they're here, though, is because this administration is about to drive our healthcare system for 23 million people over a cliff. When these subsidies go away, and they will, if we do not do something by December 31st, people's healthcare prices are going to triple.
Mark Kelly, suddenly an economist, warning that healthcare costs will triple if subsidies expire. Let's decode that. Those subsidies, they're temporary price controls Democrats slapped on the Affordable Care Act. The same law they swore would pay for itself. Remember that promise? The Congressional Budget Office called it out years ago. The ACA wasn't self-sustaining. So, they manufacture a shutdown crisis, cry Republican obstruction, and beg for more money to keep their broken promise alive. Classic. Lie, spend, deflect, repeat.
What is is it fair to just say, hey, we're not coming back until you guys pass it, or should Congress be back working?
No, we should be back there. Our job is to work and to negotiate. Sadly, this is the fourth shutdown that I've been in the last 13 years. And every shutdown, we were in Washington working, because when you're in that environment and when you're being held accountable by the press who are asking you every day, what did you do today to try and help the American people get back to work, you have to answer. And Johnson would rather just wish cast his way out of this shutdown. But again, the American people know who's responsible. Consistently, poll after poll, they are blaming the party in charge. Donald Trump and Republicans own the White House, the Senate, and the House. They can open up government immediately. But again, this is about protecting Donald Trump from getting too close to the Epstein files, and it's about hurting everyday Americans who are going to pay a lot more in their health care. They could do this now. They don't need Democrats.
Lies. None of this is about helping Americans. It's about optics and midterms. Democrats need the chaos, the shutdown, and the headlines because it keeps the cameras off their record. Why govern when you can grandstand? And while they're busy pretending to fight for working families, they're opening new loopholes for non-citizens, using your tax dollars. Here's how it works. Step 1, cross the border illegally. Step 2, claim asylum. Doesn't matter if it's true, doesn't matter if it sticks. Once you file, you're now lawfully present. And that's the magic phrase, folks. Lawfully present unlocks access to state-funded healthcare programs, especially for pregnant women and children. Democrats wrote it that way so they can sell it as compassionate care. But let's call it what it is: a taxpayer-funded incentive program for illegal immigration. This is how they normalize illegal entry. First, they redefine it. Then, they subsidize it. And finally, they sanctify it. The shutdown, the subsidies, the asylum scams, it's all the same play. Manufacture a crisis, lie about the cause, and dare you to notice. But you noticed. You're not fooled. You're not buying the propaganda. They think you're stupid. You're not. You're right. And that's what matters. Like, share, subscribe.